Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's February 20th. It's a Thursday. It's Thursday Thoughts kind of hashtag for the show. Share your thoughts. You're on a Thursday with us about CONCACAF Champions League. We saw some interesting results, some interesting things last night. Some interesting things were said. We'll get into all of that. Some stuff off the field. There's a great article from Jonathan Tannenwald over at the Philadelphia Inquirer with some thoughts from Don Garber about MLS big market teams. We'll get into that as we go this morning as well, along with anything else you guys want us to touch on. We'll be jumping into the Twitter timeline here in just a bit. But, John, let's start with CONCACAF and Champions League results from last night. Let's start with the non-MLS ones, and we'll finish with Saprissa and Montreal. But the biggest surprise was Tigres scoring first, taking a 1-0 lead into halftime in El Salvador, and then Los Paquidermos, Alianza, who gave Monterrey everything they could handle last year, they get a penalty 10 seconds into the second half, and they end up winning 2-1.
10 seconds into the second half?
Yep.
That's pretty quick. But, I mean, Alianza for me has always been a side that you want to kind of keep in your hip pocket. You don't want to take them for granted. And admittedly, this is the one match that all I saw was a result. Didn't catch any of the action because of location last night and catching some SEC hoops. But hearing that, and there have been folks on the timeline who have commented about that result specifically. But, once again, that's what, we've talked about with these opening round matches where you can't take any team for granted on either side just because it looks like in a March Madness parlance, a 1 versus a 16 or a 2 versus 15 doesn't mean that events like this can't happen. And Alianza came up and bit you.
What have people said about this match specifically on the timeline?
Michael Bucklew says, sure, there were plenty of Liga MX people talking smack last night about Atlanta drawing a Honduras team on the road. Haven't seen them tonight.
Yeah, probably not. There's another reason, too, and we'll get into that here in a second. Tigres dominated the match, and 19 shots to 7, 4 shots on target to 3, so they really weren't putting as many on target, but 19 shots. Possession, you're talking about 64% for Tigres, 36% for Alianza. Chances created, Tigres, a lot. 15, Alianza 5. But that's what some of the Central American teams can do. And Alianza is a defense-first kind of team. According to Opta, had them in a 4-3-2-1, the Christmas tree. Strong base down the middle. And they get the goals going the other way. I don't know if it's enough going to Monterrey to face Tigres next week, but it's a huge performance for Alianza. It's a huge confidence builder, and I would expect they go in and find a way to turn that 4-3-2-1 into a 5-4-1 and just sit and hope. Because a 1-0 win for Tigres is all they need. That's all they need to go through because of that away goal. They should be able to do that. But Alianza is going to make it as difficult as possible. I've been really impressed with Alianza over the last couple of years in CONCACAF.
Yeah, and going back to last year, which you mentioned with Alianza, I'm the guy that will watch Nations League and see who works their way through and look at these environments and look at these teams. And we've seen Alianza the last handful of years in CONCACAF Champions League. So for me, it's an education for me to see these sides and see where they're playing when it comes to home environments and things like that, and how tough they can be for teams that come and visit and things like that. So getting a bit of a crash course over the last handful of years about teams like Alianza has been the fun part for me, one of the fun parts for me in all of this. And I guess I'm one of the patron saints for the quote-unquote little guy by comparison. So when you have a result like that one, when you have teams like Portmore who will hang with the teams that they're going to play against, when you're looking at a team like Cruz Azul in the opening round, when you're looking at all the other teams that you're not necessarily drawn to instantly. For me, last night is another night for me that's a reason that I sit there and say that these kinds of competitions are fun to watch, even if you're outside of an Atlanta United fan looking at your own little bracket or your mini bracket to see what life is like here for the rest of the teams in CONCACAF.
The nightcap last night, a lot of people expected Club America to go to Guatemala and just steamroll Comunicaciones. They did not. Comunicaciones, Las Cremas, they get the opening goal in the 81st. Club America does get the away goal. They do get the 1-1 result. Cordova with a goal in the 90th minute off a rebound. The stats, the possession was dominant here, which is no surprise, 67% to Club America. But 10 shots out of that, 6 on target. They did force Jose Calderon into 5 saves. But Comunicaciones made it very difficult for Club America to the point that Miguel Herrera was complaining about the referee, a referee we know fairly well, Jair Marufo. Basically said if he was a better ref, he'd work in Liga MX because his dad works in Mexico. A lot of criticism about Marufo because he let a lot go, which if you've ever watched a Jair Marufo match, that's what's going to happen. And in a competition now with no VAR, well, he's going to let everybody play. So you don't have VAR to bail it out. There was one really bad tackle in the first half. Studs up from behind, kind of stepping on the back of a player's leg. Would have been a red card with VAR completely. I mean, there's no question. But Marufo does not call a lot of fouls, does not throw a lot of cards, and El Piojo did not care for that last night.
No, I picked up this one in the second half and watched Comunicaciones just hang around and be a pain. And the pass to the near post from, I want to say, about 25, nice diagonal work to the near post as you're watching on television and headed into the net. I mean, for me, it was one of those moments that you sit there, and once again, we talk about what CONCACAF Champions League is all about. If you're a neutral, you're watching a game like this, and you see Comunicaciones get that first goal in, you sit there, and for me, it was one of those jump out of your seat moments because you've got the quote unquote lesser team or the little guy getting that first goal on the board.
There's no quote unquote lesser team here. I mean, you're talking about a team in Comunicaciones who the salaries combined is nowhere near the starting back line for Club America, let alone the whole roster. There's no quote unquote little guy when you're talking about Club America and anybody in Central America. When I use that, sometimes I just feel it's a pejorative. So I didn't want it to come across as a pejorative, demeaning term. That was why I used it. But it is. I mean, it's not being demeaning. It's being real. And that's something that MLS teams have to embrace as well. Is Atlanta United, LAFC. In tonight's matches, New York City versus San Carlos. San Carlos is the little guy, 100%. There's nothing wrong with that. You see it in Europe. You see it in South America all the time. You see clubs that are smaller than other clubs in these competitions. It doesn't mean they can't compete, but they are smaller. And it's not an insult to say that they're a smaller club. Comunicaciones in Guatemala is a much smaller club than Club America. There's no question.
But, they get the first goal on the board. It was one of those jump out of my seat moments. And, you're sitting there, and first off, I'm watching the action then I've got, it's like I'm drifting over to the clock, since we're in that final 10 minutes. You sit there and it's like, all right, there's another possession that goes away. There's another kick. You look at the clock, and that was how it was for me. But then that absolute rocket that came from outside the box from about 22, and it was parried, and you get a long rebound, and it goes in, and you get your equalizer at 1. And so tremendous
can't
effort.
Give the rebound up where
No.
he did. That's the problem. Is giving up the rebound. No, you're not catching that. Don't get me wrong, but you've got to push that wide. You give up the rebound back in front of you, and that's gonna get blasted. And it did. I mean, it's bad because it's a good night for Calderon with five saves, but that one he'd love to have back and be able to push it away from Cordova. Made it a little easy for him.
Yep, and then you end up with the 1-1 there, and so your heart just goes out to them with the effort that Comunicaciones had last night.
I'm looking at the numbers, and I did not watch the match in its entirety, but Piojo complaining about Marufo. The fouls were 6 committed by Club America and 23 committed by Comunicaciones, so that's a lot of fouls for a Jair Marufo match. I don't know what more he could have done. The red card is one that I think should have been, and that would have changed the match, obviously, earlier than it was. But Club America takes care of the business they have to on the road. They get the away goal. They get the 1-1, very similar to Atlanta United, although all the drama was late in this one. And they go back to the second leg. Yeah, mad about a referee, but in great position to go through. Shouldn't really be much of a conversation. The one where there is going to be a lot of conversation is the first game of the night, Saprissa hosting Montreal. The Impact, after 4 straight losses in preseason, come out flying, get 2 goals in the first 22 minutes. Orji Akwankwo and Romel Kyoto. Akwankwo goes out injured. Kyoto goes out injured later. Rudy Camacho went out injured early. You had to use 2 subs in the first half for injuries, 1 more in the second. Thierry Henry just had to throw this together, and they get the 2-2, even though they gave up 2 goals in the last 10 minutes, and that's going to hurt. They can't get distracted by that. You got 2 away goals going back to Montreal next week. The Impact have every opportunity to get through.
No doubt about it. And once again, this is the one match that I did not see except from like the 70th minute on, and I saw things about, and I know that we get locked into formations and things like that on the show, and we try to sit there and have people look at how teams play instead of formations, but I saw stuff about a 5-3-2 from Montreal last night.
5-2-3, which
5-2-3.
Honestly can be about the same as a 3-4-3 if you want to call it that. So it's kind of funny how 5-2-3, ooh, everybody, wow, that's amazing. You have 3 center backs, you have 2 wing backs, you have 2 central midfielders, and the biggest difference in the way that Montreal played it is Boyan is more of a false 9, dropping back into the midfield, and Akwankwo and Kyoto are not really true wingers, but they're tucked inside a little bit, and they become forwards when Boyan drops. So it plays differently than the 3-4-3 that Atlanta's played a lot in preseason, but there's a lot of the same principles. And it's just funny when you see reactions to things. Just keep in mind biases, love of a great former player and biases against a different manager who is too rigid. Just saying. So, look, Montreal comes in and plays far better than anybody expected. And you have to give Thierry Henry a ton of credit to be able to take this team down there and get that result. And he talked about a lot of the same things that Frank de Boer did. It was a fight. I mean, go to Saprissa, it's always going to be a fight. And with Montreal not at their best right now, and they've struggled coming in, to get this and to get those 2 early goals, this can kickstart things for them. They can absolutely get through at home. You've got a cushion on the tiebreaker, but if you can handle your business at home and somehow stay healthy, and we'll have to wait and see about Akwankwo and Kyoto and Camacho and if they're going to be ready to go next week, Montreal could advance here when I mean, I gave it a toss-up at best, but I figured Saprissa would advance in this tie.
Yeah, I did too. I had, because of new coach and getting everything instituted that the way you're trying to get it done in a shorter period of time than you would like, and you're going to get started in CONCACAF Champions League play before you're going to get started in MLS and all these other variables. I had Saprissa going through. I'll admit it. I had Saprissa going through in this matchup off the top.
A lot of people admit it, so it's not that big of a going out on a limb there to say Saprissa is going to get past Montreal.
Big limb for me there, considering my 2-1 selections in our Bailey Daily traditionally.
Yeah, something like that. I thought Saprissa would win this one comfortably. I did not expect this performance from Montreal, and that's a credit to Thierry Henry and this group of players. So they've got to now close the deal next week in Montreal. They've got to take care of it and get through with this gift of 2 away goals. Clément Diop got the start last night. He had 8 saves. Thierry Henry said he felt like there were a couple more he could have had. Diop's a really strange goalkeeper because he is so acrobatic and he does make saves that you don't expect. But he's not a very traditional goalkeeper in terms of, being just steady. At times, it feels like he gives up some rebounds that maybe he shouldn't. At times, it feels like his positioning is maybe a little off. That could lead to some of the wild acrobatic saves that saves him here. But he feels like a very hot and cold goalkeeper, even in the same match. I'll be very curious to see if he's the guy long term. He gets the start here. You'd have to wonder if he's past Evan Bush on the depth chart. I don't know. I don't know what Montreal does to close it out, but I'll be very curious to see what Thierry Henry dials up next week. So 2 more matches tonight. New York City heading to Costa Rica to face San Carlos, and the nightcap, Olympia hosting Seattle Sounders. I know we've got a few tweets on hashtag CCL Fever, so let's dig into that.
Okay, well, do you want juice boxes or do you want CCL Fever?
We've got tweets. Let's get into tweets.
All right, so let's get into tweets. Unite Chop Rise, going back to previous action, says, I'm sorry. The ref went 3 minutes past extra stoppage time. He gifted that match to Cruz Azul.
Like I said yesterday, the one thing you have to keep in mind is the goal came with about a minute and at least a minute 15, minute and a half of stoppage time left. So you're kind of stopping the clock there, and you're going to add that back. I don't know if it should have went as far deep as it did, but there was going to be some additional stoppage time. That's a definite, and that's typical. That's not anything out of the ordinary. The rest of it, welcome to CONCACAF. Things get weird. Just get used to it. I don't know how else to tell you. These things happen quite often when we get into the world of CONCACAF.
Nathan Pugh, for his hashtag Thursday Thoughts, says, perhaps I knew this, but I've forgotten. Why does CONCACAF do a bracket and not redraw after each round?
I don't know. I don't know if it's something easier for planning, for scheduling. I have no idea. I'm trying to think of other competitions now because everybody does it so different, so sometimes I mix them up. Does the UEFA Champions League redraw after each round, or is there a certain point where it goes bracket?
I'm trying to play it through in my brain because Champions League, it's group stage, and then I thought it was bracketed all the way through.
I don't know. I don't think so, but I'm not sure where bracket happens and where it doesn't. I don't really know if it makes a difference, especially in a competition like this, because you're not truly seeded. You're very loosely seeded in drawing these matchups. Beyond that, I don't know if it's really if there's a fair way to seed it out to redraw or anything like that. So I don't know if it makes much of a difference to just go ahead and bracket the whole thing out. Some people really like that, knowing what could come ahead. Others don't because they want the randomness of a new draw every time. I think Atlanta would probably like a new draw right now after this round because they'd love to get somebody else other than Club America if both teams go through. But that's the way CONCACAF does it. And then it'll probably change in the next couple of years to something different, and then it'll change back, and then it'll change again, and that's what happens.
Daniel Price with a couple of thoughts from the matchup so far in CONCACAF. He says, so, Montreal, Thierry Henry, injuries. Where do we begin? Very surprised with how Montreal played. The 5-2-3 setup was exactly what they needed. It was tactically brilliant. It's unfortunate that there were early injuries that forced subs early. He can coach?
We'll see. It's one game, and he handled it really, really well. But the 5-2 part of it is something that you have to look at what Atlanta United's done and say it's the same thing. It's 3 center backs, it's 2 wing backs, it's 2 central midfielders. And they have done it in a very good way. I think one of the things when you look at the way it plays for them, their 2 central midfielders are more defensive, not as much of a 8 in these roles. They're more of 6s. So especially at Saprissa, that's the way you're going to play it. You're going to be very defensive. Your wing backs are going to stay home more. It's going to look more like a line of 5. I want to see how that looks at home. Do they open it up some? Or do they feel like, we're going to sit with 7 behind the ball and we're going to take our opportunities through Okonkwo, through Kyoto, through Boyan to go forward and make something happen for us? I don't know where his comfort level is. And I think the hardest thing for him, for Thierry Henry, is getting to know this group in this competition this quickly. And Frank de Boer went through it last year. Managers go through it all the time. Ronnie Dyla is going to go through it tonight. You can watch guys on tape. You can watch a whole season of play on tape, but you don't know how these players react under pressure firsthand yet if you're Thierry Henry. And you think you know who you can trust and who you can't, but you don't know for sure. And it sounds like obviously they're battling injuries with the 3 guys who had to be substituted last night. Safir Taider didn't get the start, which was surprising to me. I think he's a top central midfielder in this league, but he's more of that attack-minded 8. And Henry might have come into this and said, you know what, 7 behind the ball. 7 behind the ball easily, and we'll see if we get anything out of it, but we don't want to give up anything cheaply. It worked. Nothing you can say wrong about it because it worked. If he hadn't had to use all of his substitutions for injuries, what would he have done? No way to know. We'll have to wait and see. And I want to see how different it might look next week. That's what I'm waiting for with him. And I've read a few things. Boyan, people are kind of all over the place on him. I think he has the potential to be one of the top players in the league. I mean, we know his talent. We've seen it since he was a young player breaking through at Barcelona. Injuries have changed him, I think led him here, led him to Montreal. Can he give you enough of what people saw to call him, an heir to Messi? I mean, that was kind of the idea at one point, was that he could come in and be the next Messi. And, he's not. But can he be a top player in this league, especially in this false 9 kind of role? I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued because Montreal, the issue for them in the last couple of years hasn't been talent. It hasn't been talent, especially in wider positions or in deeper positions. It's been production up top. And this is one way to solve it. Don't play with a true number 9. Sit Maxio Ruti, sit Anthony Jackson-Amel, play Okonkwo off to the right, play Kyoto off to the left, and Boyan really fills that middle channel, but he's going to drop and try to pull defenders with him because that's where he's most comfortable. It's very interesting to see what Thierry Henry is going to pull together in Montreal. I didn't have a whole lot of confidence in it being effective. I had no confidence in him going in and getting 2 goals in Saprissa. Let's see if he can get through the tie now.
Daniel's second point. Another point to talk about is the match between America and Comunicaciones. I thought it was well played, and they gave them a run for their money. No team is overall dominant thus far. The only one I could say was León versus LAFC.
Yeah, and even that, I don't know if I would say was completely dominant. I think LAFC with only 1 shot on target would maybe point you in that direction, but They had the possession battle, LAFC, so I wouldn't say they were dominated. But yeah, that's the result that looks the, maybe biggest gap between the two teams right now. Cruz Azul on the road in Jamaica, the way they did it takes a little away, but you get that win on the road. That's impressive. We'll see tonight. I'm really curious to see Seattle tonight. I don't know what to expect out of the Sounders with them leaving a lot of business late. I think they still have a good number of holes in this roster. Olympia's not going to be an easy team to play, and as we saw, they're playing in the same venue as Tuesday night for Atlanta and Motagua. It's not an easy pitch to play on, and there's questions about Nicolas Lodeiro. Is he going to be ready to go tonight? Raul Ruidiaz, top talent. Jordan Morris with his speed, he'll be able to make some things happen here. Jovan Jones, same thing. The back line, there's going to be a lot of pressure on this back line against Olympia. And straight away, you've got a new center back pairing with Xavier Arriaga and Yemer Gomez Andrade. How's it going to look? How is it going to look with those two getting to know one another? And are they going to have enough help over on the left side? Is it going to be Nuhu? Is it going to be Jovan Jones dropping into the back line? What's the left back situation going to look like? What's the center back pairing going to look like? Are they going to play Christian Roldan out on the right wing or on the left wing? Is that how they get Jovan Jones to the back line? What about João Paulo, the Portuguese or Brazilian player coming over from Botafogo? There's a lot of questions about Seattle for a defending MLS Cup champion. In New York City, you kind of know who the players are going to be. You wonder if Ronnie Dylo will change the approach a little bit. He said he's not planning on it. And they should, on paper, be able to go down to San Carlos and get a win. Because San Carlos is a mid-table Costa Rican team at best right now. New York City should go take care of business. We'll see if they do.
Two questions from Joey Logan, and one lends itself into a promo. Okay. First question for Joey. He wants to know the lineup in Kennesaw, and he gives us his idea for said lineup in Kennesaw.
For me, it's a little early. We just don't know about Miles Robinson. We don't know about Edgar Castillo. Frank de Boer says he's expecting to have Mateo Sosetu and Jake Mulroney available. I think, It's really early because of Robinson. Because if Robinson's available, you might feel comfortable going back to a 3-4-3 at home. You might feel more comfortable going back to a 3-4-3. That could open up a place for Mulroney on the left with his speed. You do have to wonder a little bit defensively, so you might want to stick with Anton Walks on the left side. You might want to stick with Franco Escobar on the left side and move other pieces around. So it's a little too early for me with the injury, so I'm not going to go out on a limb there just yet. But if Joey wants to, let's hear it.
Joey's 11, and he also adds 7 for the bench. So obviously Guzan in net, and he's got it listed as a 3-4-3. He has left to right Walks, Meza, Escobar at the back. Mm-hmm. His middle is from left to right Mulroney, Remedi, Husetu, Lennon, and then PB&J up top.
It's possible. My question with that would be Mulroney defensively against Lopez and Felix Crisanto. I know a lot of people are like, Lopez is terrible. 11 crosses, they're bad. He's the guy they're going to try to play through. And he has had effectiveness in the season for Motagua. Could he have another stinker? Yep. Could he hit some of those crosses and actually put them on target? Yeah, he could. I don't want to make it too easy for him. So I would maybe, and a lot of it depends on Robinson. If Robinson's healthy, then it's easy to play Anton Walks as a left wing back. Have him sit just a little bit more, be a little more responsible, make sure Lopez is accounted for, make sure the overlap's accounted for. That's a little safer, and I think you still have enough of an attack. I'd love to get Husetu into this from the start. We don't know his fitness level. We don't know if he's 90 minutes fit right now. If he's not, then maybe you save him to come in the second half and break down some tired legs. it's just a little early with those injury questions on Robinson, especially Robinson, but even Castillo as well. I'm going to wait and see.
Joey's bench is Alec Kann, Mo Adams, George Kimball, Luis Fernando, Emerson Heineman, Adam John, and Jeff Lorenowitz. He does not have miles in any 18.
Well, Joey's great, but Joey's also not a doctor. So, I mean, he's assuming he's injured. That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
We don't know. Nobody knows.
Right.
So, it's okay.
Rich Ransom has... the second thing from Joey lends itself into the promo that I was talking about. And he wanted to know the girls or boys' top matchups tonight or tomorrow.
Well, why don't you give a promo about where we're going to be tomorrow, and we'll run through some of those top matches.
Pope and Harrison. We're going to be there for both matches. The girls' match is at 5:30, and the boys' match is slated for 7:30. And since it is, I think, winter break, I think is how they describe it in Cobb County schools, that is going to be the only game on campus tomorrow. So Pope and Harrison for the Soccer Down Here SDH Network High School Games of the Week. 5:30, we start with Pope and Harrison from Harrison High School in Cobb County. So that one's going to be a fun one.
Not a ton of games tonight. There's an Atlanta battle, Mays and Maynard Jackson tonight at 7:45 if you're in town. Looking at the schedule tomorrow, St. Pius at Paideia is one that jumps out a little bit. That's a cross classification battle. Rome and Whitewater is a good one of two teams from different parts of the state, two teams that are off to a good start. Looking through to see what else stands out outside of our match, of course, Pope and Harrison.
Keith Filer gave us our Houston County update yesterday, I believe.
Yeah, we talked about it on the show yesterday after you disappeared. You and Jarrett just disappearing into thin air. It's good times.
Yes.
Peachtree Ridge at Parkview is a big one up in Gwinnett to keep an eye on tomorrow. And then a big one out east, Oconee County and Clark Central. That's always a good rivalry out there. I think that's the big ones tomorrow. A lot of games tomorrow all over the state.
Well, and we will have Parkview and Oconee County on the schedule later on in the SDH Game of the Week universe. We'll have Parkview and Roswell on March the 3rd from Ray Manis Stadium on the campus of Roswell High School. And then we will finish up our regular season schedule on April 14th at Senior Night in Watkinsville for Social Circle in Oconee County. So looking forward to catching up with folks in Roswell, seeing Parkview. A lot of folks are already anticipating a packed house for that one on the 3rd. And then obviously Senior Night will be an emotional night at Oconee County. It'll be our way to end the regular season on April 14th.
Couple more for you tomorrow night. McIntosh at Pace and North Atlanta at Lakeside DeKalb. Good number of games to check out if you're looking for live soccer on a Friday night in the Georgia high school classification.
Dress warmly.
Yeah, that too.
Rich Ransom has two questions. I will give his CONCACAF Champions League question and save the other one for later because it is MLS based. Since he says out-of-towner questions, he says, why was Fifth Third venue okay for CONCACAF Champions League and not any of NYCFC's choices?
Because, and I don't know what CONCACAF's reasoning was specifically about NYC's choices. It's a full-size pitch, one. It's going to be one difference. I don't think NYC's choices had anything to do with the size of the stadium. It was about the pitch, I guess. I really don't know because NYC hasn't been exactly clear as to why Yankee Stadium was not available and why other venues were not available. So maybe some of the others had a full-size pitch but didn't have the other, I guess, minimum requirements. And I don't have the list in front of me. I know it a little bit more from Open Cup as opposed to CONCACAF Champions League in terms of having locker rooms, showers, those things on site, a separate dressing room for referees. There's probably very specific basic requirements for broadcast because these games are going out internationally. There's probably specific things about media access and media availability and a press box and all those kinds of things. Fifth Third Bank Stadium is a smaller stadium, but it has all of those modern amenities. It is designed for broadcast in mind. You have a lot of things in-house that maybe some of the venues that NYC looked at playing outside of Yankee Stadium just didn't have. And that would be my guess, but without knowing those situations specifically, because I don't think NYC actually said which venues they looked at, which venues they proposed, and CONCACAF said no to. So without that, we're all kind of guessing.
Shiva wants to know, just curious, do you know why Atuesta and BWP didn't travel with LAFC?
You'd have to ask Bob Bradley, and I don't know how many people are asking. So if people aren't asking, he's not going to tell us. There's been talk about injury, but without any detail. So I don't know exactly. And I do wonder. I wondered that Atuesta has been a question. BWP, the thing about BWP that concerns me a little bit for how effective he will be this season is those rumors that popped up, I want to say December, around the time of free agency opening up and the waiver draft and all that, where there was talk that he went to New England for interviews and they passed on him because of injuries, because of fitness. They passed on him physically. I wonder what he's got left to give and where he is condition-wise, because we just haven't seen him here. Atuesta did play in the U23s for Colombia. So did he pick up something? Is he just needing a break to ease into the season? I don't know. There are a lot of question marks when it comes to LAFC, and this is one of the major differences between two big clubs in this league. Atlanta United has a lot of media covering the team and a lot of people asking questions, so questions get answered. LAFC, they don't have that. They have one soccer beat writer with the LA Times, and Kevin Baxter seems to spend more time with the Galaxy. So you don't get quite as much coverage of LAFC. You don't have local radio following them in the same way. You don't have local TV following them in the same way. So things kind of become quieter. And that can be great for a team. I mean, Bob Bradley probably loves it because he doesn't have to open the door up and explain things as much, and he doesn't have to tell you these types of things that can keep the opponent guessing. So I don't know. I haven't seen anything specific, and I'm right there with Shiva. I'm curious, especially about Atuesta.
CAFC this morning says it's been said so often that the first goal is important for MLS matches. Hashtag CCL Fever appears to be an argument for the last goal is all that matters. Fortunately, there's another game to play, but the late goals against Comunicaciones, Montreal, and Portmore have to hurt.
Yeah, I don't think the last goal is all that matters, but I think the first goal is not quite as meaningful in the first leg of two because you've got 180 minutes you're working with. Now, in the second legs, the first goal becomes critical, and for some different reasons. If Leon gets the first goal against LA, well, then they've got a 3-0 lead and an away goal, and that means LA's got to score 4. But you flip it around, LA scores the first goal, then they're 1 goal out of it. That first goal is huge in that series. Motagua, Atlanta, Comunicaciones, Club America, both at 1-1. If the away team gets the first goal, well, then you've lost your away goals tiebreaker. You're even then, so everything to play for. If that home team and the bigger team in both of these matches, Atlanta or America, get the first goal, well, then they're cruising, and then it's a bigger uphill battle for the smaller team on the road, Motagua or Comunicaciones. So in the second leg, the first goal is going to be even bigger than it usually is in just a single match.
John Roper this morning with the hashtag CCL Fever. He says the refs had very little control over the games I saw, even the MLS crew.
Well, I mean, Marufo, we know how he works. So he's going to try to be in the background as much as possible and let the game play. And that's a personal preference if you like that or not. I generally tend to like that. And if I had to choose between a referee who's going to blow the whistle a lot and a referee who's going to blow the whistle less, I'll take the guy who's going to blow the whistle less, probably 10 times out of 10. Now, that brings up risk of teams abusing that, teams getting, to where they try to take advantage of it. And that's where I think the absolute best referees will step in and manage the match when it needs to be managed. And that's a criticism that sometimes is leveled at Marufo, that he's just too slack all the time. And when the game starts to edge to getting out of hand, he doesn't really change. I think he does a little more than he gets credit for, but yeah, that's going to be the criticism of that type of referee. Flip it to the other way, you get a referee who blows the whistle a lot, there's not as much room to change. Because if you're going to change from being lenient to being strict, can work with that because you're adjusting to the match. You're adapting to what's happening in front of you. If you are a referee who blows the whistle a lot in general, and then you loosen up as the game goes on, it's a little bit harder to find the line, I think. It's a little bit harder to manage that as a team, as a player. And the other thing about referees who blow the whistle a lot, oftentimes they go to the cards faster. And in a competition like this, with accumulation being what it is, that's a struggle. And it does get into referees' heads. And if in this first leg referees were reluctant to throw cards, that's probably a good reason why. And if that stays consistent throughout the competition, okay, that's the trade-off of having a 2 yellow accumulation in this. But where it gets crazy is when you have lenient. Okay, here comes the blackjack dealer. And you're screwed because you've gotten used to playing and dealing with a referee who does it one way, and then it completely flips on its head. So it's CONCACAF. I mean, the biggest thing here is something we talk about a lot. Referee development needs to be a bigger priority everywhere. In the United States and Mexico, you need to develop more referees so you get past the top referees in those countries that are working in these competitions. You need to develop more referees in every country in CONCACAF. And there's just not enough good ones on a regular basis. And when guys get older and retire, well, then where's the next crop coming from? I want CONCACAF as a confederation to work with the national associations to put more of an emphasis on referee development. The guy that Atlanta had on Tuesday, Escobedo, first CONCACAF Champions League match, but he checks the boxes of a guy who is on the way up. He's working in Liga MX. He has done a U17 World Cup now, so he's getting FIFA-level stuff. He's done everything in CONCACAF up to this point. He's done Gold Cup, he's done Nations League, he's done CONCACAF League. He's 32. Okay. That's a referee that can have a 10, 12, maybe 15-year career. It's great, but it's going to be a little bumpy at first. We need more of those guys coming through, getting that experience even earlier to push referees, just like players have to be pushed, just like coaches have to be pushed. Referees have to be pushed. We need more to be developed continually to make it better. And there's just not enough good ones across the Confederation right now.
When do yellows reset?
Going into the final.
Going
into the final. So it doesn't really have much of an effect. You're not going to have a accumulation yellow for the second leg of the final. That's it.
Josh Sherry this morning, he says he's just thinking there should be a group stage to add another element and better transition MLS teams into the CONCACAF Champions League season. and he also thinks it's the round of 16 and quarterfinal draws for UCL.
Okay. I would love it if there was a group stage. The way CONCACAF Champions League used to have a group stage. And I don't know why they haven't done it to the way that I'll suggest. The way they used to do it was in the fall, so the Champions League would be on the same calendar as the UEFA Champions League. You'd have a group stage in the fall, you'd have the knockout rounds in the spring. That was what they did for a few years. They changed it a little bit. I think they had a 4-team group for a while, then they went to a 3-team group. Because, look, there's gaps. I mean, there's gaps with the round of 16 right now. You see the gaps between the bigger teams and the smaller teams. It's there. It's real. It's not disparaging smaller teams. It's just the Guatemalan league is not as strong as MLS or Liga MX. That's fair. Now, then when you add a group stage and you add even more, well, then you're going even further down into that quality. You create some mismatches. I mean, you had some blowouts. I don't necessarily hate that because that's how those smaller teams get better, in my opinion. CONCACAF went the other way. They created the CONCACAF League for more of the smaller teams to play, more teams around their level, and strengthen the group as a whole. In their opinion, they feel like that's the best way. What I'd like to see is a calendar similar to what South America uses, where the Copa Libertadores will be starting in, I think, the first week of March. That's where the group stage starts. Now, they have qualifying rounds before that they've been going through. I don't know if CONCACAF needs to have qualifying rounds. I think you could have a 16 to 24 team competition that starts with a group stage. And it starts in, let's follow the CONMEBOL calendar. Let's follow the CONMEBOL calendar completely for a year and see what we think. Now, people, I don't know if maybe Mexico would fight against this because it would cross over 2 seasons. I mean, it did before as well, and I think everybody was okay with it in general, except the MLS teams didn't want those group stages late in the season as they were getting close to the playoffs. And that was one of the pushbacks about group stages. I would like to see CONCACAF tell Liga MX teams and MLS teams that they need to play these games. They need to play these group stage games. It will benefit the Confederation as a whole. And here's what South America does. So once you get to the group stage, 6 match days. It's a group of 4. It's typical. You have 3 in March, which maybe you need to spread it out a little bit more. Maybe you do need to bump one up into this kind of edge, this part of the calendar. That's fine. You can look at where Libertadores has qualifying rounds around this time. But they do 3 group stage match days in March, 2 in April, 1 in May. Round of 16 is end of July. Quarterfinals, end of August. Semifinals, end of September. Final, end of November. Now, you'd have to balance that around Liga MX playoffs and MLS playoffs. But I think you can find the way to make it work. Teams in Europe deal with the end of their season and Champions League semifinals, finals. I think MLS could find a way to deal with it. You wouldn't want Champions League matches, like semifinal games, maybe during the playoffs. I don't think you could do that. But if you could find the way to make the calendar work to where you have your semifinals before the playoffs, maybe 2 weeks before the end of the regular season. And if the final then is after, and see, this is where you got to find it between MLS and Liga MX. If the final can be somewhere between the MLS Cup final and the Liga MX final or right after, maybe you can make it work that way. I think it would work better than what they did before with a group stage in the fall and then knockouts in the spring. I think it'd work better as a calendar year tournament with a group stage. It's just managing the calendar between MLS and Liga MX. And maybe it's going to take a little more time for those leagues to partner and work together and coordinate their calendars. There's really no reason they can't, even with the differences in the way the competition's structured. get on the same page with when the playoffs fall, when the final's going to fall, and then that would help CONCACAF a ton, create a Champions League schedule around it. But I'm with it on group stage would be great, and especially for MLS right now, if you ease into it, if you've got 6 match days instead of 2 games to advance, if you get 6 games in a group, then it's more manageable to start now. Even if you have 2 games now, I'd take that trade-off. You take this round of 16, these match days, and you turn them into group. You'd still have 4 more games. You'd be able to handle it better. I think it would work. But you just have to make the calendar work, and that's always the hardest part.
Last CONCACAF question that we have for the rundown as of the moment is from Gustavo, looking at the proposed lineup from earlier this hour. And it's a little philosophical where Atlanta United is concerned. Gustavo says that lineup would show FDB's strategy for the season, wanting to renew and rearrange all of Atlanta United spots except for DPs. He says that De Boer's hand now is obvious.
Well, it's a proposed lineup, but yeah, I mean, I think he obviously has the point of the spear. The point of the attack is PB and J. It's Barco, it's Pitti, it's Joseph. And whatever the configuration is, it's going to play where Barco and Pitti, come in underneath Joseph, and Joseph is your focal point. That's fine. So what do you do behind that? And is it 3-4? Is it 4-3 behind that? Or do you adjust it to where you play Pitti as a 10 and you incorporate another wide player? Could that be Emmanuel Castro if he steps up? Could be. Could it be a Brooks Lennon over there? Could be. Could be a Jake Mulroney with his speed. And I think it very well could be at times. You've got a lot of different options. But, yeah, the 3 designated players are always going to be what you build it around. And it's going to depend on the opponent. It's going to depend on form. It's going to depend on availability. Is it a line of 4? Is it in the back? Is it a line of 3? Is it a line of 5? Is it 2 central midfielders? Is it 3? You have a lot of flexibility.
Let's see. We have some MLS stuff, or would you like to do news and notes to end hour number 1? Or juice boxes?
Well, let's go ahead and give your juice boxes on CONCACAF. You're excited about the juice boxes for CONCACAF. You found some, huh?
Yeah, I did. I think I did anyway.
Well,
San Carlos and NYCFC. San Carlos is at plus 150. The draw option is at plus 240. NYCFC is at plus 155.
I like NYC in that, and I will put
what I was looking at.
Nice apple cranberry juice box on it.
And then your late night, Olympia is at plus 155. The draw is at plus 230. And Seattle is at plus 155, courtesy of our friends at Bet365.
Very basic lines here.
Yes, very. But the NYCFC one was the one that stood out to me, and that's why I've been hopping up and down, waving frantically about doing this segment.
Out of all 6 possible results, one of the teams winning or draw in each match, I think NYC winning is the result that I like the best and feel the best about. The one in the Olympia Seattle game, man, I feel like I'm flying blind going into that. I would probably lean draw, but I'm kind of tempted to go Olympia to win that.
Okay.
I'm going to go Olympia to win that because I just don't know what Seattle looks like. So it won't be a good juice box. It'll be something I don't like for the juice box. So it'll be like a grapefruit concoction of some sort. That'll be in the juice box for the Olympia win.
Yeah, I like your cran grape, cran apple for NYCFC to win. But, yeah, I'm leaning at the very least draw for Olympia and Seattle.
We shall see. Both games tonight on FS2. Believe both games are on 2-day NA as well, so you'll have English and Spanish coverage of it. And it's a doubleheader. So CONCACAF Champions League fever tonight from 8 to midnight. Be plenty to talk about tomorrow on the show after that. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and reset for hour number 2. We've got some other things going on in MLS, a lot of preseason action. Some players are getting injured we have to talk about. Don Garber is talking about some things on the big picture side of the league. You guys have some Thursday thoughts. We'll be taking those throughout hour number 2 as well. But we're going to take a quick one. We'll be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Almost the top of the hour. Close enough. We'll take it.
Yeah.
Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here, February 20th, Thursday Thoughts edition. Tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. Let us know your thoughts, whether they are CCL fever related, whether they are MLS related, whether they are USL Championship, NISA, NWSL, NPSL, wherever you want to go, national teams, yada, yada, yada. Go ahead and tweet at us. Give us your Thursday thoughts. I think we have some associate producer kind of thoughts to start with.
Yeah, Tafka has come in this morning. It says, I don't know about anyone else, but once a year, I'd really enjoy a special episode called Soccer Down Beer, where Jason and John get very drunk into a podcast, and then he had the thinking emoji and the wry grin emoji following that. And he says, or maybe it can be a drinking game for the season's various predictions. There's something there. And then Alex Pacine came in and said that every time you pose a question to yourself and answer it, we take a shot. We should all be in a safe place before this starts.
That's frightening because I didn't even realize that I did that much. So, man, now I'm going to be self-conscious. Thanks, Alex. That's not good. The other thing that's not good about this is I would have to be drinking for 2, so
Correct.
That's not going to end well because John does not partake in the beer. So
no, he does
then
not.
I'd have to drink his beer, and
True.
I don't want to.
It'd be like the KRP episode with Venus and Dr. Johnny Fever and the guy from the Ohio State Patrol talking about the virtues of drinking and driving. It'd be like that.
Virtues of drinking and driving?
Well, whatever you want to call it. Don't do it.
Well, it's not the virtues. I don't know if there are any
hazards
virtues
of drinking and driving.
I'm going to go with no virtues of drinking and driving.
The non-virtuous nature of drinking and driving.
Yes, the virtues of not drinking and driving.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, get a negative in there somewhere, John.
Man, I was a little scared.
Yeah, it would end up being like I would end up being Dr. Johnny Fever, and Jason would end up being Venus Flytrap. For those of you that remember the episode, and I'm sure that segment is available on your favorite video catcher. So
that was ridiculous.
No,
I think most people. Well, I don't know if most people remember WKRP or not. It's been forever since I've seen anything WKRP related on a television. I'm sure that it's available on one of Netflix, Amazon Prime, or Hulu. I would think. Right. Maybe it's being held for one of these other streaming services that is popping up. So I don't remember the episode at all because I barely remember the show, but I'm going to go with it wouldn't be like that because I would probably be asleep at some point because I don't drink that much either. I just don't. I don't drink like I used to. So
no, I just full disclosure, Tafka. It has been quite a long time. It is just not something that I do, and basically, I am everyone's designated driver, and will do that gladly for any situation that I'm in. And
so Daniel Price is trying to chime in to take your spot for the drinking, which is also frightening in a different way.
Sure,
so
go for it.
I'm not doing the show.
I will be more than happy to drive anybody and everybody home.
No, I'm not doing the show. You guys can do your drinking show and have fun with it. I'm just going to sit over here and do something else. Sorry. I would fall asleep. It would not be good.
So it wouldn't be good radio is what you're saying?
Probably not. No, probably not. No, I'm going to go with no.
Okay. Natasha this morning has come in. And she had a question about something she read in The Athletic about FC Cincinnati.
Okay.
And it lends itself into Atlanta United. She says, in a recent article on FC Cincy for The Athletic, Jeff Ruder said, quote, every other recent expansion side launched with a general manager or coach or both who came from within the league, end quote. And she wanted to know, is Atlanta United no longer recent, or am I forgetting an important member of the front office?
So let me ask myself the question and see if I get this. So go ahead and drink, everybody. I'm going to guess they're talking about Paul McDonough and maybe even Carlos Bocanegra. McDonough had the experience with Orlando. Now, he wasn't... What roles did they say came from within the league? Because McDonough wasn't technically in any of those. I don't
Just think. Flat out front office. GM, coach, or both.
Yeah, they said specifically. So if that's the case, then no, they're incorrect leaving Atlanta out because Atlanta did not have that. Unless they wanted to say Bocanegra came from within the league because he came back to Chivas, finished his career with Chivas USA, and started his career with Chicago. I don't know if I would have called him as coming from within the league, but I guess you could stretch that.
So that was, and I went back and read the article, and it had to do with the recent stuff that's going on with FC Cincinnati. And so that was
the bigger picture here is what's going on with Cincinnati, and they absolutely got it wrong with the way that they built their front office at the beginning. Now, they did have a pretty quick course correction, and I think they are headed down the right path. This whole thing with Ron Jans, man, the more things that are said, and it sounds just all over the map. I have no idea what happened. I wonder if there's going to be an issue within the team. I don't know. It's a huge setback for Cincinnati because I thought he had them playing much better at the end of the season. I liked how that team looked defensively, and I liked where they were headed. I thought Harris Medunjanin was a good addition for that team the way they wanted to play. I think the other additions have been good too. I don't know if they were going to be a playoff team coming into the season, but I felt like they would be far more competitive and a difficult opponent. Well, now with all of this, you're not all the way back to square one because you do still have a talented roster, but how much of an effect is all this going to have? How much of a distraction is it going to have? You already had to rebuild from a bad decision to come in, as Jeff Ruder points out, without a lot of MLS experience in your front office. Well, you went out and you didn't get MLS experience in your front office directly, but you got good soccer experience, and I think things were trending in the right direction. It felt like there was a plan. It felt like there was a coherent idea of what FC Cincinnati was going to become. It can still be that, but are you going to maybe change it again now that you're looking for a new manager, or are you going to go look for a manager that fits that vision? I think it's going to be the latter, and there was my question to myself.
Drink.
Drink.
Speaking of FC Cincinnati, can you hit the breaking news sounder, please?
Yes, FC Cincinnati is providing lots of breaking news these days.
FC Cincinnati have acquired Dutch midfielder Siem de Jong on a free transfer. FCC will decide whether de Jong will be signed as a designated player or if his contract will be bought down using allocation money ahead of the 2020 MLS roster compliance date on February 28, 2020. He will occupy an international spot and be added to FC Cincinnati's 2020 roster upon the receipt of his international transfer certificate and P1 visa. He made 5 appearances, including 2 starts with AFC Ajax, scoring 3 goals across all comps in the club's current season. Quote from Gerard Nijkamp, "We believe Siem will play an important role in adding to the final third and efficiency of our attack. Not only does he have an impressive intelligence and skill set, he has also played in some of the most prestigious competitions and has been a leader on and off the pitch throughout his career. We feel he will be a great addition to our club," end quote.
I want to see what Cincinnati looks like on the field now, because if everybody's healthy, you're coming in potentially with a lineup of Teton in goal, Greg Garza on the left, Kendall Waston, Michael Vanderwerf as your center backs, Mathieu Deplan as your right back. Central midfield, you can go in a lot of different directions. You've got your newcomer. You can add him in front of Medunjanin, Alan Cruz. Then that means you've got 3 in the front. I think it might be Adrian Regatin, Yuya Kubo on the wing, and Jurgen Locadia as the number 9. You've also got Joe Gial, Kekuta Mane with pure speed that could go on the wing. You've got Frankie Amaya who could fit in there as an 8 or a 10. This is a really interesting team. There's a lot of new faces in it, and there's a lot of players from different places in it. And you wonder how quickly it all comes together, but there's a lot of talent there too. A lot of talent. This is a gig that, if you're a manager who I think fits into the Dutch style, because you have Gerard Nijkamp there, you had Ron Jans, you were building in a certain way. You want to bring in somebody who's going to continue that. So you want to bring in somebody with that kind of thought process. Jaap Stam has been mentioned as a manager for FC Cincinnati, and I have not gone back to study Jaap Stam's soccer philosophies just yet, but maybe that kind of a hire would be the fit here. Somebody who can continue along the path that has been built, because you've got a lot of talent. This is a team with a lot of talent. Maybe they end up being a surprise in 2020. Maybe Joam Deme has fallen into an incredible situation. They come out of the gates hot. They might not need to go hire anybody else, which would be a crazy turn of events for FC Cincinnati, but the talent, the work this front office has done, I did not think when Gerard Nijkamp talked about how many players they wanted to add, how many impact players they wanted to add, I didn't think he'd be able to clear the room to do it. I didn't think he'd be able to pull it off, because they had so many guys on bad contracts from the very beginning. And they, in this offseason, have added the new one today, Yuya Kubo, Jurgen Locadia, Adrian Regatin, Harris Medunjanin. That's a lot of talent. That's some stuff. That's a lot of talent, and a lot of attacking talent. Nijkamp said they were going to do it. He pulled it off. You got to give him a ton of credit.
Speaking of life in the East, Rich Ransom's other question this morning so far on #Thursday Thoughts. Wanted to know why, he goes, and really, at Philadelphia Union or at Philly Union, not in any of your top 3 previews? Revamped midfield, easy schedule, full of momentum after greatest season ever.
I think it's the revamped midfield that I want to see a little bit more first. And I do think they can be there. If Shabilko's healthy, he's among the best forwards in the league, in my opinion. And I think his injury late last season was a huge benefit for Atlanta United, and it really hurt Philadelphia. I think Alejandro Bedoya being more banged up than maybe he would admit didn't help them either at the end. Here's my questions about Philly. What does this midfield end up looking like? Are they going to stick with the diamond? If they are, who falls where in it? Because I don't know how the pieces fit between Bedoya, Jamiro Montero, bringing him back was huge, Oravec, Jose Andres Martinez, Warren Krival, I think, is more of a reserve at this point, Brendan Aronson. Anthony Fontana is a player that I think you'd love to get more time, but there's no time for him at the moment. And then is it going to be two up top? Are you going to do the 4-4-2 diamond? If so, is it Shabilko and Sergio Santos? Is it Shabilko and Andrew Wooten? What's that pairing going to look like? The talent's there. I was always a big fan of Harris Medunjanin with that team. How do you replace what he gave them before? Have you gotten better because now you're a little younger, a little more mobile than Medunjanin, or are you going to miss him being the fulcrum in possession? I think Philadelphia is a playoff team. I just don't know where they fall yet. I have more questions about that revamped midfield right now. They can be a top 3 team, but I don't know if they're guaranteed to be a top 3 team right now, whereas I would be surprised if Atlanta, New York City, or Toronto is not in the top 3. I would not be surprised if Philadelphia was not in the top 3. That's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Philadelphia is a part of 4, 5, 6, 7. They are a part of my playoff picture. Just the where right now is it for me. As things stand, they're a part of my 4, 5, 6, 7. Obviously, if things fall one way or the other, they could go into that top 3 discussion. But yeah, they're a part of it. Okay,
so we're getting into a thing on Twitter right now that is kind of interesting to watch the carnage. Jonathan Tannenwald had a great piece over at Philadelphia Inquirer yesterday, I think. I'm not sure if it came out this morning or yesterday. But Don Garber was on hand when Philadelphia announced that their new stadium sponsor is Subaru, and it's going to be Subaru Park. That's a big get. I was talking to Mike Conti about this yesterday, and Subaru is a big sponsor in Philadelphia sports and a big, employer in the Philadelphia area. And I don't think they had any kind of a relationship with the union before. And according to Don Garber, it's the first time they've had any kind of partnership like this in any major league sport. So it's big to have Subaru involved. But from this interview at the Philadelphia Inquirer that it was posted yesterday, Garber mentioned, one, how he likes what's happening with Philadelphia. I thought this was an interesting quote that maybe we need more time to dig into separately. I think the big turnaround with this club was with Jay and his partners recognizing that they needed a technical director that would be able to not just be focused on youth, but understand how to play in the transfer market. Talking about Ernie Stewart, is going to be an unbelievable technical director for U.S. soccer. But I think Ernst brought a lot more professional soccer experience. And when he came in, he had a very different strategy and a very focused one to utilize their resources in an effective and efficient way. Kind of a shot at Ernie Stewart? Kind of? I mean, it's not, offensive, but he's saying that Ernst understands the transfer market, has more professional soccer experience. I mean, it's not like Ernie Stewart did not have professional soccer experience, so a little bit of a shot at Ernie Stewart. And I would agree with Don Garber here. I think that Ernst Tanner has made this team better from where it was when he started. I think that's an absolute fact. Now, the conversation that's getting people going this morning is a quote from Don Garber and a conversation starter about Major League Soccer in big markets. He said, "We have, unfortunately, throughout the years, had some of our smaller markets be our most popular teams." Okay, that's true. And that's great. But we've got to get our bigger markets, who have way more competition and have a lot of history that they're working through and working against. I'm looking forward to seeing them be more successful. Now, every market's different. And, John, if you could pull up the top 10 TV markets currently. I want to make sure we have the current top 10 TV markets to talk through. Because, look, you've got a TV deal coming. And, yes, streaming is going to be a bigger thing in this TV deal than ever before. Yes, there's probably a time not that far off that this type of metric, TV markets, is maybe not as big of a deal. But you have teams in big cities, and when they don't do well, the league can take a little bit of a hit from it. So how do you have these teams do well? I mean, it's on the teams. They have to sign the right players. They have to sign the right coaches. They have to do the right things. They have to have a good marketing plan. They have to have good exposure in the media, all the things we talk about, and we'll continue to get into here in a second. Top 10 TV markets, what are they right now?
New York.
Okay.
Los Angeles.
Hold up, slow down. New York City, building a stadium. We'll see what that is when it happens. And it sounds like it's on the train to happening. So, okay. Does that change them? I think you have to kind of wait and see a little bit. Red Bulls, afterthought in the market. And you would include where they are in New Jersey in that market, correct?
Yes.
Okay, there's no argument to say that they're not. I still think they need to market more to New Jersey and their local area, but that in the overall New York market, both Red Bulls and NYC are an afterthought. Maybe a new stadium for NYC helps change that. We'll have to wait and see. What's next?
Los Angeles, number 2.
Okay. Different for sure, because the Galaxy have been one of the biggest clubs in the league from day one. So they've held up their end of the bargain. LAFC has come in and been huge. Can those two teams be even bigger in their market? Yeah, I think they can. And that's going to come with time, and you're going to have to cut through the noise of the Lakers and the Clippers. You're going to have to cut through the noise now with the NFL back. The Dodgers are massive in LA. The Angels, not as much. The Kings, I mean, I think when they're hot, they're a big deal. When they're not, are they? You might probably know better than me, John.
No, as the resident LA Kings fan on the show, they would be what we refer to as an afterthought.
But when they're winning,
yes,
where do they fall?
When they're winning, it is bandwagon central. Everybody's on it.
Okay. So if they're like that, and soccer's a little different, but LAFC's packing it out right now. They're winning. They're packing it out. Will people stay? I'd like to think they would. I don't think they would have the drop-off maybe, but in the market, they're not where the Kings are right now, I think, overall, in terms of exposure. The Galaxy are a little different. The Galaxy have been one of the MLS 1.0s that have been big, have been important, I think are a brand that is very well known in that market. So LA, hey, they've done really well out of the top 10 markets. Who's next?
Number 3, Chicago.
Oh, boy.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago came in with a bang. Chicago moved to Bridgeview. Still had a bang with Cuauhtemoc Blanco. And for the last decade, the Chicago Fire have been a bad club. That appears to have changed. So back at Soldier Field, back with soccer people making good decisions, I think, in building a product. Will they be different? Well, they made a huge move to being different in getting on WGN TV.
Big.
That, out of the markets we've talked about right now, the top 3, That's massive in terms of exposure and credibility. The Galaxy got a big TV deal and a good check from Spectrum for Spectrum Sportsnet. I don't know what their ratings have been. There were some published a couple of years ago that were not good, but the money was really good. WGN-TV is a lot of credibility for a club that needed it in a big way. So it feels like maybe Chicago's turning the corner, which is crazy and good to think about.
Well, looking at the TV deal in and of itself, WGN lost the Cubs to the self-created marquee TV network, which has got nothing but just pitchforks and tiki torches from all the Cubs fans because of the lack of availability that it's going to have for cable households. WGN needed a property to, have that sports element back as a part of their library, and it makes a lot of sense that they would chase after the Chicago Fire. So how much weight is WGN going to throw behind the broadcast? Is it going to be any kind of ancillary programming? Is it just going to be game on, game off? Those are the questions that still need to be answered. But the fact that the Chicago Fire have paired with WGN, which puts them on cable systems across the country as WGN America, it's that big move for Chicago. And that was
I don't know about the WGN America thing. I would not jump to that conclusion.
Okay.
I don't think that's the case because that's a national broadcast that gets into a whole different level. So, no, I think this is WGN-TV just in Chicago.
It's local. Okay.
Yeah,
but still,
yeah.
Big deal. Big deal hooking up with
deal.
Channel 9 and making sure that you're a part of the fabric of Chicago. You want to, sit there and pair yourself up. You couldn't have done a better partner, I don't think, that needed the inventory at the same time.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit with Mike yesterday. WGN has really built itself around live TV, with a lot of live news coverage, and you need live sports to go along with that if you want to be a live TV powerhouse. And without any other sport, this is huge. This is the only sporting partner they have right now. They are doing a primetime special, Chicago Fire FC Homecoming, that will air on March 20th. On WGN in advance of the Soldier Field home opener against Atlanta on March 21st. Starting in April, WGN will air a monthly series featuring interviews and profiles of players, coaches, and fans. So there will be some other programming along with it, too. Huge partnership. That's the kind of partnerships that teams in big markets have to be relevant. So Chicago is starting to cut through the noise. That's really good work by Chicago.
Next up, Philadelphia.
Look, last year, I think things started to change a little bit for the Union. They were getting talked about on Sports Talk Radio. The coverage on the newspaper side is great with one of the best soccer writers in the country in Jonathan Tannenwald, and a newspaper that does commit resources to it, although they did not send Jonathan to the Eastern Conference playoffs here in Atlanta, which was a big surprise, a very big surprise, and I think still shows that there's room to grow. Their TV deal has not been announced for 2020 just yet, and it's really close. I don't know what it's going to be. They have been on over-the-air ABC before in Philadelphia, so I wonder if they'll continue with a partner like that. But they're in Chester, and they're not downtown, and that is a bit of a conversation for them to have with being more relevant. There's been this idea floated out there that they might play some games downtown where the Eagles play. I don't know if that's a bad idea. I think that could really help them become bigger and more relevant in their market. We'll have to see, but Philadelphia putting a better product on the field is definitely helping them be more relevant.
Next up on your top 10s, Dallas-Fort Worth at number 5.
This is a combination of a lot of things. They're in Frisco, which hurts them. It limits the attendance. They have not drawn well. They do not have a local radio broadcaster. I don't know if they have local TV all the time. They've had situations where they've streamed games on their website. I think a playoff game was included in this conversation here at one point. Those are things that have to change. I think the soccer product has been good. The attendance has not matched to the level of the product. What they're doing on the player development side is as good as anywhere in the country, but they are not relevant at all in that market. And it's a tough market. The Dallas Cowboys are one of the biggest teams in the world, and they're always going to dominate coverage. I don't know, kind of where it falls for the Stars, for the Mavericks, for the Rangers, behind the Cowboys. But the Cowboys dominate everything in that market. Not even getting into college sports, not even getting into high school football either, because that's a crazy thing in Texas. There's a lot for FC Dallas to fight through, and they have not fought through it well.
In years past, Dallas has had a deal with one of the over-the-air stations, TXA 21, which I think it's either CW or UPN. And then with
but
that,
they've thrown on an overflow at times, and
yeah,
it wasn't. It sounded good on paper, but it wasn't quite the deal that, if you glanced at it, you think it is.
Yeah, and you also had other elements of it where it would be on other CWs and UPNs across the state. It was like 5 or 6 other stations that were CW UPN-ish kind of things, and it would end up on 21.2 and things like that. It would
feel to that deal.
Be all over the place, and it really took some detective work to kind of pin things down when it came to if you wanted to watch FC Dallas, where you could do it.
So let's go back real fast. New York City feels like a big club. Red Bulls do not feel like a big club consistently enough. And that's a shame, because they should, and I just don't know if they come off that way enough. The LA teams feel like big clubs, so they feel like they should be a big deal. Chicago, they haven't, but I think there's hope. Philadelphia, it doesn't feel like a big club yet, but I would say they're trending in the right direction. Dallas does not feel like a big club in a huge market. That's a problem. They feel small in a big market. Okay,
and I found the email that I thought had come across my bow here. FC Dallas announces its 2020 TV schedule. 29 regular season games to air on TXA 21 and the FCD TV network. 5 on national television, 4 on Unimas, 1 on Univision.
Okay, the national stuff throw to the side because they have nothing to do with that.
Yep.
So it's the same kind of deal. I mean, it's on lower tier over the air, which I don't. It's so hard now with the TV landscape changing so quickly. Is that better than being on like a Fox Sports affiliate? I don't know. I think from a prestige standpoint, maybe it's not. But from an accessibility standpoint, maybe it's a little better. But then the way this is going with getting thrown on like a 21.2 at times, I don't know where this falls exactly in terms of being a good deal or just a deal.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to read.
Yeah. FCD TV network gives them another 1 million additional households to access in Amarillo, Lubbock, Tyler, Waco, and Wichita Falls. But to me,
that part's good.
What this does is it gives you the opportunity to control your own content. 30 minutes prior to kick, FC Dallas Live presented by Toyota for all locally televised matches. So that show can be found on fcdallas.com/live and then on Facebook and Twitter. But I think that what FC Dallas is doing in this particular case, being on lower tiered network affiliates and spinning it out to your own network, you can control the ad space, you can control content, you can control production costs, all of those different things. You keep it in-house, and then you try to find your own partners like they've done with the TV network in spreading it out over North Texas to build your brand out that way. So I think that that's one of the things that FC Dallas is looking at here, is that instead of being on a Fox Sports net and that's another whole entirely different kettle of fish when it comes to content and ownership and all that kind of stuff. You can control the message in this case.
Yeah, all that's true. But if you're looking at it from the outside and you see the Mavericks on, I'm assuming one of the Fox, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know the
FSN,
Dallas ones.
Yeah.
The Stars, FSN.
Yep.
The Rangers,
FSN.
And FC Dallas.
Over here.
That, from a perception standpoint, will affect it, because I saw what the reaction was to people when they announced the Fox Sports South and Fox Sports Southeast deal for Atlanta United. It's like, oh, that's big. So perception and that stuff is really important. I think Dallas is making the most of the situation, but they don't feel like a big club, and they're in a big market, and that can be a very difficult uphill battle.
Number 6, your tri-market of San Francisco, Oakland to San Jose.
San Jose feels like a small team in that market, for sure. You're talking about a market now that's getting really weird with the Raiders leaving it, but the 49ers are massive.
And the A's have decided not to have a radio deal with a local partner this year.
Yeah, and people have wondered if that's because there's not a local partner that would be interested, because they've bounced around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants have not had that problem, I'm assuming.
KNBR forever.
Yeah. The Warriors have had a huge run of success before this year. They're a big deal in the market, I think is a safe statement, correct?
Yeah, CSN Bay Area, same with the Giants.
Yeah, and the Quakes are on the NBC Sports affiliate there, which is good.
NBC Sports Cali, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good look. I don't know what they do for radio. I don't know what kind of local media coverage they get. But they definitely feel dwarfed by the other teams in the market. And looking at it from the outside, they don't feel like a big club in that market. So maybe that's another area for some growth. Who's next?
Washington, D.C. / Hagerstown, Maryland at number 7.
So D.C. has had this battle for quite a while. The Redskins are just a huge behemoth there. You have had the Nationals move in since D.C. United launched, and they've had a lot of success as of late. The Capitals and the Wizards, second tier in terms of, a pretty good step behind Redskins and Nationals. Is that fair?
Nationals are trying to figure it out.
Okay.
I think they're massing right now as things stand.
But just in terms of who's the biggest team in town, it would be Redskins, then Nationals.
Yes.
Then a bigger step, and maybe it depends on who's having more success between the Caps and the Wizards.
Yeah, I'd go Caps 3 right now, Wizards 4, just because of what they're doing on the field.
Yeah, and that could easily flip. Now, DC went out and signed Wayne Rooney is one way to cut through some of that, and I do think they need to have big stars wherever possible. It was the right play. It just didn't end the way that anybody expected, and it's not anybody's fault. It just happened. So you see that DC understood they needed to do that. I think they've also understood that they need to be on local TV because they don't have local radio. So last year, being on Flow Sports, they didn't have any local broadcast coverage, period. And that's not even getting into the Flow Sports stuff being a mess. That's got to change. They're another one like Philadelphia that has one of the best soccer writers in the country in Stephen Goff, and the Washington Post has always given soccer a lot of coverage. So that part's great, but are they talked about on local sports talk radio? Probably not. Are they relevant on local TV? Wayne Rooney got them a lot of attention, but are they going to be that way now? I don't know. And I do think that DC United can be at that Capitals Wizards level with superstars and with good play on the field. I think they can be in that conversation, but it's a huge step to get into the world of the Redskins and even the Nationals.
And right now, DC United, I think, is going back and forth with either NBC Sports Washington or the local ABC affiliate, whether it's stuff on the ABC affiliate or their .2.
I think it's going to have to be the latter, because they tried with NBC Sports Washington, and there's just not enough space. They would get thrown out to streaming stuff, I think, a good bit because of other contracts.
And so, so if you're looking at News Channel 8 or JLA 24/7, whatever you call it, over there. So that's what you're hunting for when it comes to DC.
It's better
number 8,
Flow Sports. It's a step in the right direction.
Yes. Number 8, Houston.
And this is one of the ones that has been baffling to me, because Houston has had a good team on the field in recent years. Not last year as much, but they've had good talent, good interesting talent. And they have a great stadium downtown. I mean, they did what you were supposed to do in building a venue. It's a soccer-specific stadium. It's downtown. It's right by where the Astros play, correct?
Yeah, it's in that same area.
Yeah, and it just they can't get through the noise. I don't know the Houston market all that well. I don't know where things fall with the Astros pre-buzzer Astros, pre-trash can Astros and all that. But I don't know where it falls with the Astros, with the Texans, with the Rockets, kind of who dominates the town.
Depends on who's winning. It is a town that is attached to winning. So I would say right now it's probably some Astros, Texans, Rockets, and Texans and the Rockets would flip back and forth depending on seasons, which really don't overlap. So you probably could have Astros at 1, Texans/Rockets at number 2, because there isn't a whole lot of seasonal overlap there.
And the Dynamo are not in that conversation at all. And I don't know what they do to cut through it. I mean, I don't know what the marketing is there. I don't know if they're just not connecting to the Latino market either. It feels like they're not. And I wonder, they're not an MLS 1.0 team. And that's the thing, is you have some of the clubs that came into the league at the beginning, and Garber, alluded to it, and Mark Fishkin, who has followed Metro Stars, Red Bulls from day one, has alluded to it. You have a perception of some of those teams that started at the beginning when the league was far smaller, had to survive and get through bad situations. Small crowds at the Meadowlands, at Giant Stadium for Metro Stars. People might still look at the Red Bulls, even though they're not a new club, but a new name and a new brand, as an extension of that. And like, oh, well, they were that team that couldn't draw anything at Giant Stadium, so why are they a big deal? You have history that you have to overcome. Houston doesn't have as much of that. And Houston had success straight away when they came to Houston. They won MLS Cups. They had a great atmosphere at Robertson Stadium, University of Houston. It just never has crossed over to the new stadium, and it's a great new stadium. It's just, it feels so disconnected. Like they don't feel like a part of Houston. And that's a shame, because Houston's a huge market, and they're not relevant.
Last year, in doing the quick research on this, English language radio was abandoned in favor of just simulcasting the play-by-play from Glenn Davis. Channel 57 in Houston over the air is the home for 28 of the matches in 2020. And that starts on Saturday, March the 7th. So Cube 57 has been a longtime TV partner. There's been some Spanish media. And right now it's still Cube and trying to find a radio partner on the English side.
So I think we get the point. We don't have to go all the way down to number 10. But how does this change? And Mark Fish can put a question out, because Mark, I think at times, and I think Mark does great work with the Seeing Red podcast, and I've been a guest on it many, many times. I think Mark at times has been beaten down by just battling through this because he's been one of the only consistent voices covering MetroStars / Red Bulls in that market. And he's done it independently, and he has put in a ton of work, and the Red Bulls are what the Red Bulls are. They're a team that has put tarps up in their soccer-specific stadium because they can't fill it. That's a shame. And they're in a huge market. Mark asked, how best should MLS make inroads to relevance in 1.0 cities? Bigger stars, better stadiums, more marketing. Those are the three things he asked. For me, immediately, bigger stars. I think it's bigger stars because can you sell a better stadium? It's impossible to argue that the Red Bulls experience on an average match day was better at Giant Stadium versus Red Bull Arena. Red Bull Arena is one of the best soccer stadiums in this hemisphere. It's an unbelievable venue. It's a wonderful venue to see a game. Even with a smaller crowd, it's loud, it's intense. You're right on top of the action. Sightlines are great. It is a great venue. They can't fill it. So the stadium doesn't sell it by itself. More marketing, better marketing, I might argue. I think that's something that is a must. You can't do any of these without some elements of all of them. But I don't think a marketing pitch changes it either by itself. I think what DC did with Wayne Rooney got the most attention from a single move from a 1.0 team that's trying to become more relevant in their market. They got a ton of coverage. They sold a bunch of tickets, and he produced. Did he produce for multiple years? No, he didn't. But he produced. How many times did you see that clip of Rooney chasing back, making the tackle, putting in the cross to Luciano Acosta, the goal? That was everywhere. It was everywhere in D.C., and people were excited about it, and you created a level of excitement about that club that you didn't have before. Now, can you do it without him? We'll find out. We'll see where that excitement is. Can you keep people once you got them? That's where the good marketing comes into play. But I think in those markets, bigger stars are the key. And we talked about it in Chicago and Houston. We mentioned Chicharito for both over the years. He ends up in L.A. because L.A. has consistently had stars. The L.A. Galaxy have consistently went out and got stars. That's what cuts through the noise. It's 100% what cuts through some of that noise. Soccer players that the masses know. Do they come cheap? No. Do you then have to have marketing around it? Yep. But I think it's down to stars. I think the other things can help incrementally, and you'll see progress, and it's a longer road to success. You could get there. Chicago, if they continue the road they're on, they don't go get big stars, they'll be far better than they were, but I think they'll hit a ceiling. If they go get a big star, man, that accelerates the whole thing, and I think they might be able to break through that ceiling a bit.
For the record, Boston / Manchester, New Hampshire is 9, and Atlanta is number 10.
Boston's a weird one because a lot of people say New England's a bad soccer market. I disagree. I think when they've had a good product, they draw really well. Is Gillette Stadium the best in the world for it? Not with a 25 or 20,000 person crowd. No, it's not ideal. It feels smaller than a 25,000 person crowd does in some other big venues. But when they're a relevant team and they're playing well and they're competing for trophies, they draw, even without big stars. So I think they have a great soccer market. I think the product has to be good. And it had been bad for a while. After going to MLS Cup 2014, it slid and slid and slid and slid and then fell off a cliff. Well, Bruce Arenas changed that. The crowds came back last season. Late last season, the crowds are coming back. So I think Boston's a little unique in that. They don't have unique radio. They simulcast. But they have radio, they have TV, they have a huge sports talk station that the Revolution do get some coverage on. So it's not bad in Boston. That's a model that I think some others can follow. And Atlanta, hey, it's not a 1.0 team. We've talked about it. They've done everything to come off as a big deal, and they have succeeded in that. Coming in year 4 now, they have come in and they are at the same level with all the other teams in town. The Falcons being bad lately has helped maybe make that a possibility. Yeah. But yeah, they're right there. Are there groups that don't like Atlanta United and love the Braves? Yep. Are there groups that love Atlanta United and don't care about the Braves? Yep, that happens. I think the Hawks have fallen behind the others. And maybe that won't be the case if they start winning again, because you have a superstar in Trae Young that is exciting to watch. So I think it's stars. I keep coming back to that because I think that's where my opinion maybe has changed a little bit. The other things have to be there too, but to cut through the noise, to make inroads to relevance is the term that Mark Fishkin used on Twitter. Stars.
Yeah. I mean, and especially if you're trying to make those first steps, I think that you have to bring in those stars. Yeah, development is fantastic, but to get people in the door, you have to have that instant drawing card, and you have to want people to sit there and spend that disposable income in a way where they're going to be instantly engaged in what you're doing. And with John Wall Street, I think it was couple of weeks ago, had an article and a couple of thoughts about how sports are pricing out the middle class family. And I think that you look at disposable income these days, and you have to attach yourself to a sport or maybe 2 sports, and you can't spread yourself to everything in a market if you have a family and you want to go see something. So you have to line yourself up with a particular sport in a particular town. And if, say, MLS has a team in your market, they have a star or close by, and they have that star that's that instant drawing card, you're going to want to spend that disposable income as a middle-class family in that direction. So I think that there's openings there for those 1.0s if they bring in those stars.
The right stars, too.
Yes.
And people will argue on the Red Bull side that they had stars. Thierry Henry, huge star. Rafa Marquez, big star. Tim Cahill, I'm not going to put in that same level. I don't think he's as well known to your just average sports fan, but another soccer star. Thierry Henry didn't move the needle in New York. He just didn't. But when you saw David Beckham come to town with the LA Galaxy, you saw 69,000 people at Giant Stadium. So they will respond to stars. Even going back through history, I mean, it's old history now, but Pelé, they responded to Pelé.
Chris Hutchison brought that up.
Yeah, that was a big thing. So I'm not going to necessarily buy the argument that, well, Thierry Henry is not as well known outside of the soccer world as you might think. And it's that thing that we do to ourselves sometimes in the soccer bubble, that we convince ourselves that big stars are big stars. They're not all made the same. They're not all, the same, having the same impact. They just aren't. Thierry Henry is not David Beckham. Thierry Henry was not Pelé. He's not Wayne Rooney. He's not. Wayne Rooney was a bigger deal in D.C. than Thierry Henry was in New York. It's just how it worked. So if New York wants to be, if the Red Bulls want to be relevant, and it's completely against the way they have built their club, a superstar. Otherwise, you've got to build over the long haul, and you've got to really have better marketing. You've got to better market into the New Jersey area.
Yes.
You've got to make it a more localized team. You've got to understand that, look, you're just not going to be relevant. You're not going to get talked about in the New York Times. You're not going to get talked about on WFAN. You're not going to live in that world. So find a better world for you and talk to a smaller group of people, but talk to them in a more intentional, direct way and build relationships. I don't like this idea that I think some people who have been in the game for a long time and have been through a lot of this, just like the 1.0 clubs have things they have to overcome. I don't like this idea that it's just, well, there's nothing you can do. Well, then just close up shop. shut down the stadium, close up the team because they're never going to be a big deal. I don't buy that. A bad team can become a good team on the field. You make the right moves. A team that doesn't draw very well can start to draw. A lot of times because they start winning. If it needs to be more than that, we'll figure out why. It's a defeatist attitude to just throw your hands up and have this impression that, well, it doesn't matter. We're never going to be as big as anything else. Look, other things are changing too. Baseball is not what it used to be. And in 20 years, I don't think baseball is going to be what it is now. I do not see that happen, and they are not connecting to young fans. They are, it seems like, shooting themselves in the foot on a regular basis. They're not handling the media well. The commissioner is a press conference, bad times in his press conferences. He is not winning over anybody.
Nope.
So baseball's on the decline. Over a much longer stretch, you don't have as many kids playing American football as you used to. There's a lot of safety issues. There's a lot of concern about that. And kids are not playing football like they used to. Over time, that's going to have an impact. Because it's a fact. If you grow up playing a sport, you're far more likely to become a fan of that sport when you're an adult. If you don't grow up playing football, are you going to be as likely to become a fan of football? If it's still a big deal, yeah, you are. But over time, that's going to diminish. There's a huge opportunity for soccer. Basketball will be there. The NBA, I think, will always have its ups and downs. I think it is a very superstar-driven league where there are compelling stars. Teams do really well. When teams are good, teams do really well. When teams are bad, they don't, because it's a league that's also very accessible to watch on TV. If your team's bad, you can stay home and watch LeBron, stay home and watch Steph Curry, stay home and watch whoever your favorite star is around the league. That's an issue the NBA always has to battle. I think the NHL is always going to be more regionalized because the kids here don't grow up playing hockey like they do other sports. So you don't have as many fans baked in. So it's a harder run. There's a lot of markets like that. Soccer has a lot of things going for it. MLS has a lot of things going for it. It's not a free ride. You can't just open the doors and expect 100,000 people to show up. You have to put in the work. Atlanta shows you a blueprint. Charlotte's following that blueprint. Nashville maybe should have followed that blueprint a little closer. LAFC has went through kind of a little different of a blueprint. Miami seems to be following that. You've got the LA Galaxy, who have been big from day one. You've got other teams in Sporting Kansas City that offers a blueprint. Minnesota has figured theirs out. Cincinnati has done a good job of being a big deal in that market. To just say that, well, there's nothing you can do, I disagree. I really disagree. Maybe it's just because I'm that sunshine-pumping American soccer fan that thinks that it can be a bigger deal than it is. But it's superstars. I really think that that's the next step for MLS to cut through the noise in some of these markets. Big-time stars.
Brian Wallace says, I think New England has a problem with just playing in Foxborough. When I went to a game there in 2018, it was an absolute pain to get out there. Almost got stuck there by missing the last train back to Boston.
Yeah, and that's why when they're not a good team, it's very easy to say, nah, I'm not going to go because that's bad soccer. If you want entertainment, look at Mark Fishkin's thread on Twitter, at Mark Fishkin, with some of the responses. Promotion relegation is what will change everything. It'll fix it all.
Morning, Ted.
Yeah, there's new Teds out there. I have Ted muted. I've had Ted muted for a long time, but there's plenty of other people out there. So that's going to fix it. No, I really think it's superstars, and it's not an easy thing to do. Look, there's only a few of them. There's only a few, as we just talked about. Thierry Henry was not that superstar that New York needed. David Beckham would have been, but David Beckham gets to call his shots on where he's going to go, and he went to L.A. New York can definitely attract superstars, but you got to pay for them, and you got to be willing to sell it and do what it takes to bring that player in. I'll be curious to see if the Red Bulls go back to that approach, because it's not what they've done, and I don't know if the Red Bulls are just satisfied with where they are because the New York Red Bulls are not the top priority or the second priority or maybe even the third or fourth priority for Red Bull soccer, and they're definitely not anywhere near that for Red Bull sports as a whole. I mean, you're getting into, F1 and all kinds of other things that they do in extreme sports that the New York Red Bulls are a much smaller thing to them. Maybe where it is, not putting a ton of money into it, getting a little bit back from time to time, not losing a bunch of money, but not making anything. Maybe that's comfortable for them. Maybe they feel like it supports the rest of their things. It's a shame because I think it could be so much bigger, but maybe they don't see the need to put more revenue into it, put more resources into it, put more spending into it to go get a superstar to be relevant. If that's the case, they've got to get better marketing then. And they've got to tell that story more effectively of we are going to develop the local talent of the tri-state area, and they will become superstars in the world. Look at Tyler Adams. You've got to go that route then, and that's just a longer route with a lower ceiling.
Let's see. To wrap things up, Daniel and Chris Hutchison have gone down the spin-off show rabbit hole.
Y'all keep drinking. Have fun.
Josh Airy with the Soccer Over There question this morning.
Okay.
Can someone explain this emergency signing of Martin Brathwaite by Barcelona? Obviously, 16 million pounds is chump change for Barca, but how did they pull this off? # Thursday Thoughts.
Let me make sure I get this right. There's some kind of clause in La Liga's rules that allowed it. I want to make sure I cite it correctly. So the transfer window closed January 31st. There's an obscure ruling in Spanish football that stipulates any of their 42-member clubs, so it's the top two divisions in the Spanish leagues, they can apply to sign a player outside of the transfer window, providing that several specific conditions are met. The first is that the buying club suffers a long-term injury, a minimum of 5 months out of action, as evidenced by medical experts. So then, if they make the application, they make the petition to the La Liga Medical Commission, and it's approved, they can sign a replacement in that same position. There's a bunch of caveats to it, and this is what complicates it even more. The player that they sign has to come from another La Liga club. They would only be registered to play because they can't move to a different league because of the European competition. So they have to come from La Liga. All right. What's hard about this, and what is the most awful thing about it, is, okay, Barcelona sees the rule. They say, you know what? We got an injury here. He's going to be out for 5 months. Hey, La Liga Medical Commission, approve this. They take a look. They're like, yeah, he's going to be out 5 months. Okay. You can sign a replacement. It has to come from La Liga. Has to, can't come from outside the league. So it has to come from a La Liga first or second division team. So that limits who you can look at. Now, in this case, with Braithwaite, he had a release clause. So it's not even where Barcelona can do this, and then they have to negotiate. There's a release clause that they're able to do it. They just go and say, oh, the release clause is X. Cool, here's X. He's ours. Thanks for playing. And now you haven't even just taken advantage of the rule to help your team. You've hurt another team. And there's nothing they can do. They can't go sign a replacement. The rule doesn't apply to them. It's not an injury. They lost a player because Barcelona had an injury and was able to activate a release clause. How crazy is that? It's a stupid rule, first off. And if you're going to have a stupid rule like this, you have to give the team that loses a player the ability to go do the same thing. Like, go sign somebody. They can't. So it's not even that Barcelona gets to take advantage of the rule. They get to hurt somebody else. It's a stupid situation.
And now apparently Leganés lost their two best attacking players in like a 6-week period, losing one player to Sevilla and now losing Brathwaite. And they're they're part of the relegation scrap too right now.
Yeah, so they didn't have the depth to deal with this, but because it was a release clause, it's not a negotiation. And that's the thing. If he didn't have a release clause, then Barcelona would come to them and say, yeah, we'll offer you X. And they're like, no. Like, well, we'll offer you even more, X plus X. X plus Y. Nope. All right, X squared. Nope. You might find a number that Barcelona can pay that then they'd say, okay, but you don't get to have that negotiation because of the release clause.
And so apparently Barca inserted a 300 million euro buyout clause into Braithwaite's new deal.
Well, yeah, because you set that release clause at an obscene amount because nobody's going to pay that. If the release clause is not at an obscene amount, then in this situation, well, there you go. Done. No negotiating with you. Thank you for your player. Have fun trying to find somebody to score goals. See ya. And that's awful. The loophole is bad to begin with, but the loophole is made even worse in a situation like this where the team that loses a player can't go out and replace them. So it's a bad situation all the way around. La Liga needs to look at their rules and close the loophole to begin with, period.
And I think, other than folks continuing to debate lineups for next Tuesday and the spin-off shows, we're caught up.
Okay. I'm not doing any drinking shows, but if you want to create more things for me to do to make people drink, I can have fun with that.
Alex Vecine says, don't you dare change, by the way.
It's funny because you know how it is. You do this stuff and you pick up habits and you start to do things that just become second nature and you don't realize that you do it.
You're naturally inquisitive.
Yeah, I didn't know I was naturally inquisitive of myself. I never really picked up that I did that a lot, but I get it. Huh?
I asked myself a question and I said, self?
Yeah, don't do it like that. I'm not thinking about it. Like my brain is not deciding to ask itself a question.
No, but what you're doing is when there's something out there that is ruminating in your brain or in the universe, you're thinking through the process in a straight line,
for sure,
and you're trying to come to a conclusion of what's going on in your brain.
It's the thing that you do, and I've done it at live events, and I always think about it where you have a live event like we did on Saturday, and people ask a question, and maybe everybody doesn't hear the question, and you kind of repeat the question in your answer a little bit because you want to make sure that it's all complete and everybody understands what you're saying.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just setting that up on my own by asking myself the question and then answering it. I don't know.
No, I'm the same way. I just sit there and it's like, okay, well, if X. But usually for me, though, as I'm trying to sort it out in my head, I'm writing things down on a piece of paper in front of me and kind of flow charting it as I'm thinking it through.
Yeah, I guess I just do that with words, and I don't flow chart it. I just talk through it and ask myself questions to get to the answers that I'm trying to find. So, now I'm going to be self-conscious about it. That's what's going to be funny.
Come up with a buzzer.
Start to do it and be like, thanks, Alex. No, I'm just kidding, man. It's all good. I think that's it for today. I'm running around all over the place today. So stoppage time at 2:00, facebook.com/929thegame. I will be heading over to catch up with our friend Fred Khalil at CBS 46 to talk Atlanta United. I think it's for the weekend shows, although it could pop up tonight. I think it's popping up tomorrow. I will say hello to Fred for you. Be catching up with him for a segment. And then I'm getting to do something a little different tonight. I am recording a podcast about the band REM in the 90s.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm going to be part of a roundtable on that. So that'll be fun. I get to talk about something completely different. And I will start to ask myself a question about it. And they'll be like, what in the world are you doing?
Top 5 underrated REM songs.
Wow. See, I've been thinking specifically about the 90s because of this, but top 5 underrated REM songs off the top of my head are Untitled, which is on the Green album, 1988. It's like the 11th song that it literally doesn't have a title. Love that one. Walk Unafraid from Up came out in 98. That's one of my all-time favorites of theirs. Half a World Away from Out of Time in 91.
I would have said Swan
Still
Swan H.
from Murmur in 83. Swan Swan H was a single, so I don't think you can really say it's underrated. And that's what I'm trying to think of, stuff that wasn't a single, wasn't a high-profile release. Find the River is probably a little too high-profile, but that's one of my all-time favorites, the last song off of Automatic for the People.
Yep.
I will go with, for my last one, Letter Never Sent off of Reckoning in 84.
There you go.
Yes, and music, Alex broke me. Yes, you did, Alex. Music, note of the day. Today, I think he would have been 53 today. Kurt Cobain was born on this date. And I posted my favorite Nirvana song on soccerdownhere.net in the Biscuits and Gravy post. I would have loved to have seen what they would have been doing later in their career, because after the Unplugged performance, there were some interviews out there, and it kind of ties back into REM. It's why I wanted to finish it this way. He talked about how much that he admired REM handling fame and not losing their minds, and kind of being the father figures in some ways of that scene that broke in the 90s. REM kind of laid the groundwork for it and showed bands how to handle their careers. I think that Nirvana would have gotten really, really interesting as they got older and approached things in a different way. The limited amount of things that they did are incredible. Smells Like Teen Spirit's one of the most important rock songs ever in terms of kind of ushering forward a new generation of rock. And it wasn't the first in that generation. I mean, like I said, REM and others in the 80s, but that song is a watershed moment in American popular music, and you'll never take that away from Nirvana and Kurt Cobain's influence. So I just would have loved to have had more and loved to have seen what it would have turned into, because I think it would have been pretty special. I think you would have seen more stuff like Unplugged, more stuff in an acoustic vein, and it would have been really interesting to see how they would have evolved. But Kurt Cobain was born on this day. I think he would have been 53 today.
Yep, love the acoustic album, and You Know You're Right is also one of my favorite Nirvana tunes.
And that was kind of put together afterwards. I mean, you had some of the recordings, but Nevermind is an incredible album, and In Utero, it was an incredibly bold decision when they were so big and basically heading into being not just the biggest alternative band in the world, but maybe the biggest rock band in the world. And they went in the complete other direction and went as noise and punk influenced and just abrasive with In Utero. It's an amazing album, and I honestly listen to that one more than Nevermind at this point, because I just sometimes I have to think about that, about, you know, as you can go and chase, like Nevermind could have led them to go do a very slick, polished record with the next one, and radio would have been all over it, and MTV would have been all over it, and they could have been as big as they wanted to be. And they went the other direction and really challenged the audience and challenged popular music with an album that was in your face in a very different way. And that was a bold move at the time. And they created a brilliant piece of art. And you have to respect that. So after I finish my REM podcast tonight, I will probably be listening to some Nirvana in honor of Kurt Cobain. So that's how we end today. We'll be back tomorrow morning we will be on the air tomorrow evening for some high school soccer as well. But check us out on Stoppage Time later today. Myself, Mike Conti, Jimmy Vance, 2 o'clock, Facebook.com/929thegame. Thanks for all the tweets. Thanks, Alex, for breaking me. I appreciate it. Mucho platiel.
Much platiel.